Well, hey, why don't we get started? Want to welcome everyone to our SAEM Next virtual meeting series. This is the final meeting that we're having for the summer. And before we dive into this week's discussion and panel, I just want to thank the SAEM faculty who have organized this for the last 9 weeks over the summer. We've had over 30 professionals join us. We've had close to 400 participants over the 9 weeks. And it's really been an eye-opener, I think, for a lot of us as we have tackled issues with sports, arts, and entertainment. And, you know, as faculty, we are attempting to keep up to date with what's going on in our industry of sports, arts, and entertainment. And as our students can probably imagine, it's difficult to do. And yet, with these wonderful professionals that we've had some really great insight as to what's going on as best as they know in the industry. So I just wanted to thank the SAEM faculty for spending all the extra time this summer to help us organize this and do it in such a great way. In particular, who's on with us, Brittany Arnett. Brittany has organized this for us. We're not always the most organized bunch, and she pulled this together for us and has made this look wonderful. And in fact, for anybody who's watching, this is our 9th session, and you can go back and watch any of the first 8 sessions where we began in May or June. Anyway, it was 8 or 9 weeks ago, and just watch, and you'll see some real similarities between activities happening in the world of sports, arts, and entertainment. And I think for professionals who are on with us today, you know, you might learn some things from the folks in theater and music that you hadn't thought of, some out-of-the-box ideas. And for the folks that are in theater and music, you might learn some things from the sports folks that are here with us today that you might be able to adapt to your current situation, that ever-changing current situation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jazlyn Rozier. Jazlyn is our SAEM co-moderator for today, and she's going to give us a couple of the ground rules for today. So Jazlyn, let me throw it over to you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Jazlyn. Just make sure everyone stays muted so everyone else can talk. You can ask questions in the little chat button down there. And then towards the end of the call, that's whenever all of the panelists will be able to answer the calls. Just be respectful and don't interrupt, and then this will go smooth sailing.
We'll take it from there.
Let's get it started.
Okay, Jazlyn, and just keep an eye on the questions as they come through. And for everybody, we'll interject your questions maybe throughout the discussion today and certainly at the very end. At about 11:45. So let's get started. If we could, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to introduce yourself and tell us what your current role is. So Hailie, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, everybody. So my name is Hailie Sandor, and I went to Point Park and studied sports, arts, and entertainment management. Bob was actually my very first professor, very first class there, so it's really cool to get an invite from him to talk to everyone today. But I actually work for the USGA, and that's the United States Golf Association. And what I've done for the last 4 golf seasons for them since 2017 is work in their digital media, and I help manage all of their social media, digital media content that way. So really a content creator at heart, and absolutely love it. Did not have a background in golf before I started with them, and got my intro with them through an internship from somebody that Bob actually introduced me to at the USGA that I now work with. So it's been a really fun ride, and we've had a lot to replan and rebuild with the situation at hand, and just excited to talk about that.
Great, Hailie. Thank you. And we're anxious to hear from you as well on what's happening with your business. Jim Popovich.
Yes, thanks, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Vice President of Ticket Sales and Service for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I oversee not only the revenue side, but also a service side and also our ticket operations side. I've worked closely and for Bob Derda for many years, so happy to be here. I've also, with another panelist, Gerald Jones, worked side by side with him for many years. I see a lot of familiar faces, excited to share some of our stories that we're working through now during this ever-changing environment. So looking forward to talking with everybody.
Jim, thanks for joining us. Gerald?
Thanks, Bob. Good to be here with so many of you today. Old colleagues, both in Bob Derda and Jim Popovich. And Hailie, it's nice to meet you. Mike, good to see you again as well. And Paige Beal, thanks for having me as well. I'm the recent co-founder, or founder, I should say, of 5G Sport and Entertainment. 20 years in the sport and entertainment industry, started with the Pittsburgh Pirates, opened PNC Park, moved on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, stint with Feld Entertainment, Pitt IMG Sports Marketing, as well as most recently minor league baseball headquarters here in St. Petersburg, Florida. So excited to be on this panel and chat with many of you.
Thank you, Gerald. Thanks for joining us. And Mike Trudnak.
Thanks, Bob. I used this line yesterday. I'm going to use it again for all the newbies. I am the president of the Bob Derda Mustache Fan Club. So we are welcoming members as we speak.
Goodness.
So I am the general manager for Bucknell Sports Properties. It's under Learfield IMG College, and I'm also the regional director, and I oversee Temple Sports Properties, Lehigh Sports Properties, and Drexel Sports Properties. So when people hear Learfield IMG College, they get confused a lot with what is that, because there's IMG in a lot of different things, especially in the sport agency realm. But basically, we handle the revenue side of athletics. So when you buy a shirt, I'll use Penn State as a reference. And when you buy a Penn State shirt at the store, we sell and negotiate those deals for the licensing rights for them to use that Penn State logo. When you watch or listen to a game on TV or the radio, we negotiate those TV and radio rights. And a lot of the times we hire the talent, which are the broadcasters that go into that as well. And then when you go to a sports venue and you're watching the highlights of the last game or the fan of the game up on the video board and all the signage, we sell all of that. So I worked with Bob for a few years when he was at Duquesne. And I've been at Learfield IMG for 5 years, spent 13 years in minor league baseball prior with the New York Yankees and Philadelphia Phillies.
Great. So Mike, you touched a little bit on your career. If you could just give, for our students in particular, a sense of sort of that navigation that you've had, getting your first job and then getting to where you are today.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a step back even further, because in order to get your first job, you have to do something that separates yourself, right? And we talked about this in our pre-planning call leading up to today, is when you're in college and you are there for 2 years or 4 years, whatever type of schooling you were getting, you have to think, when I graduate, how many thousands of kids are going to be graduating the same year I am and applying for the same type of jobs, right? So for me, when you are in school, it all starts with internships. Everything that I did in order to get my job into minor league baseball coming out of college led to the internships that provided me those opportunities. So starting my sophomore year, I did internships with the Penguins AAA team in Wilkes-Barre. I did internships with the Jimmy V Celebrity Golf Tournament, with the Maxwell Football Awards in Philadelphia. All of those led me to getting references and getting people to say, hey, Mike, I heard here's an opportunity for another internship, or here's an opportunity for a job. So all of those things led me to minor league baseball. My last internship, my senior year, it was an 14-credit internship. And I had to work 40 hours a week in the field. I had an internship lined up with the Philadelphia Phillies, and my first semester, my senior year, my track coach in college passed away. And I wanted to continue to have my season. So I said, I'm going to have the season, I'm going to give up my internship, and I'm going to find something local. I could not find anything local. And what I did is the general manager for the Philadelphia Phillies AAA team was speaking at a night class to a freshman class. I dressed up in a suit. I went to the freshman class. I sat in the back of the room, listened to everything that he said. Afterwards, I followed him out to his car in my suit, explained my situation. He looked at me and he said, son, if you are willing to dress up for an 8 o'clock class in a suit and follow me to the car and explain your situation, not only am I going to give you an internship, I'm going to give you a paid internship, because watching you show that initiative is leading me to think that you're going to be or have a bright future with our club. And I went and I did an internship, and I stuffed envelopes in a conference room by myself for 8 hours a day. And I faxed pieces of paper, because I'm showing my age here, because that's how you got information out about season tickets to companies. 8 hours a day. And I never complained once, and I always asked for more opportunity. And when an opportunity came, everybody in the company said, hey, Mike's done everything we've asked him to do and some, and he's done it with a smile. Let's offer Mike this full-time job. And that's how I got my start in sports. So I just wanted to take a step back, because I think it's important, because if we wait until we graduate to start the process, it's too late. So whatever you guys can do now while you're in school to network and build those connections and make a name for yourself, it's going to be beneficial, and it's going to give you an advantage over all of those other people who are waiting until they're done with school.
Thanks, Mike. That's a great story, and it's one that those kinds of stories are what we repeat often about gaining experiences however you can, stepping out of your comfort zone and doing something to make yourself noticed. And I know, Gerald, you've had the same kind of experiences. You worked really hard to get to where you are. Kind of lead us through that pathway.
Yeah, so coming out of grad school, I think the networking thing, and I did my graduate work at Southern Mississippi. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, just kind of gearing up for this call. Someone knew someone, the senior associate athletic director at University of Pittsburgh was looking for somebody, and she had just been at a conference with the senior women's administrator that I worked really closely with at Southern Miss, and said, hey, do you know this guy? Next thing you know, I'm driving to Jackson, Mississippi, flying to Pittsburgh, which I'd never been to Pittsburgh, and only north of the Mason-Dixon line twice for that matter, and hit it off with Donna Sanft. And for those of you who don't remember, she also was the interim AD for a while and done some really good things over at the university, longtime gymnastics coach. And she said, no, you were a great fit for this, and so forth. And then that channeled into one of Jim Popovich's current colleagues on the operations side, former colleague of Bob Derda's, Chris Hunter, who was dating at the time, and now married to Angela Hunter, who was running ticket operations at the University of Pittsburgh. And just in a networking kind of a happy hour, hey, we're hiring, you should come talk to us. So I got into ballpark operations. And then I told the story yesterday a little bit too, and Bob, you did not know this, that, me presenting in front of so many of the operations staff that Jim still has to work with. And those guys in those days did not want to seat people without you being ready to tip those guys, the fans as you were coming into the ballpark. We had to change the culture, and the idea was to train these guys and say, they won't come back if you don't do X, Y, and Z, so let's hold off on the tip demand. And we did change that culture. But Dick Freeman, the COO at the time, was really impressed with, I guess, with the way we presented and kind of the delivery of that message, and said, we're wasting your talents if we hold you in operations, and so we need to put you in corporate sales. And so that was 2002, and since then I've had 17 years in corporate sponsorships, and it's been a fun ride.
And Gerald, I just want to point out for everyone on the call that, we tend to try to direct students in a certain way based upon your skill set and your interests. And you, however, are an example of somebody who is in the world of operations and moved, way over to the area of sales and revenue generation. And you did it because you're a talented person who is open to learning. And so many times, we don't want you to think that position that you choose coming out of school is the one that you'll be in for the rest of your career. In fact, that area may not be it. That you get in and you learn and you're open to learning, and then you move to maybe another area that's more suited for you. And you're a great case of that, Gerald. So thank you for sharing that. Hailie, do you have other things to talk about in terms of how you got to where you are?
I would just echo what a lot of people have said about internships. I mean, I had a unique situation transferring into Point Park. I actually called Steve Tanzilli before I had technically started as a student at Point Park in a extreme frenzy the one day, and said, hey, I've actually got an internship with the Steelers, but I have to get credit for it. It was over the summer before I started with Point Park, and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm not enrolled in any sort of classes yet. And Steve and I kind of figured it out and worked it out. And then once I got fully immersed into the SAEM life, I was fortunate enough to intern with the Steelers, the Pirates, the Penguins, and the USGA while I was in school, and worked with Chris Hunter in operations for the Pirates for a bit. And my internship with the USGA actually is really where I got my foot in the door. And going into this major, all I wanted to do really was be at the highest level working in sports and figuring out what that highest level was. And did I have a passion for golf? Did I love golf? No. And I was very transparent with the USGA when I was interviewing for my full-time position of, I don't have that huge golf acumen, but I'm really interested in learning about it. And I have the social media skills that you guys need. And I feel like you can probably provide me the golf background that I needed. So what I would just say to people is get as many internships as you can and utilize the professors. I mean, Ed Traviseri helped me get 2 out of my 4 internships, helped me with the Pirates because he had Chris Hunter come speak to us in class, and then helped talk to Jimmy Sacco at the Steelers when I went for a larger marketing internship with them. So, I mean, just utilize the people that you've built in your network and kind of in your built-in network already at the university, and then just work really, really hard. That's kind of all I can say just to get to where you want to be.
And I'm going to speak for all the panelists here, and that this is a group of people that work really, really hard. There are no shortcuts in this business. You'll get found out immediately and you won't last. And Hailie, you're a great example of somebody that just worked your tail off while you're in school. You know, people saw that and they saw you're open to learning, and congratulations on the wonderful career you've had already with a lot of exciting things I know ahead for you. And Jim Popovich, give us a little read on anything that we might have missed along the way in your sort of your pathway.
Yeah, exactly what everybody said. My story is very similar. The one change or one thing I will add is sometimes you never know. Like a lot of times we want to be prepared, but you never know what you're going to run into. My story, I started off after college. I worked for Finish Line. I was assistant manager at a Finish Line store selling shoes. And a gentleman walked in and he had on an Orlando Magic hat. And I did my internship with the Cleveland Cavaliers. We started talking about NBA, and I said, oh, the Magic are playing the Cavs. I mean, that's in the time of Penny Hardaway, Shaq. A lot of people on this call probably don't even know those names unless they watch ESPN Classic or something. But so we started talking, and it so happened that gentleman worked for the Pirates, and he ran the customer service department. So we started talking. He says, hey, you want to come down for an interview? And that's where I started. I started off in customer service, worked my way up into the box office, ticket operations, had a sales opportunity. Mr. Jim Alexander, good friend of a lot of people on this call, he gave me an opportunity to do sales, and that's how it was. But a lot of times we prepare for a meeting or an interview, but sometimes you never know when you're going to run into somebody or when an opportunity presents itself, and you got to be prepared, and you always got to make sure you're presenting your best foot forward. Gerald Jones talked about culture. He mentioned culture, and that's the one that we are always trying to build, and you always want to make sure you fit within a culture, and you want to have that positive attitude. And if you have that as your core, people will hire you, and we can teach you a lot of things, but sometimes we can't teach is how to treat people, how to act in your hard work.
That's a great point, Jim. Thank you. What I want to do now is just switch gears a little bit and just throw out a topic to you. And I just read this morning in the Wall Street Journal where it said basically that in Europe, they're already playing games with fans, and so they kind of look at sports as being it's been a 4-month process where we started off with, certainly there were no sports, and then they migrated to sports but no fans. And today it looks like they're beginning to let fans, attend events. And we know that, in the United States, NASCAR has done some things already. Hailie mentioned golf is up and running. MLS soccer season began, although 2 teams have dropped out because of the COVID situation. Women's soccer, professional soccer is also up and running. So there are some things happening, but for the most part, we're kind of still at that. We're about ready to start our seasons, and they will be without fans. And so, Jim, you're kind of living that right now. And so I'm most curious from everybody as to how you've been able to engage with your fans during the couple of months that we've gone through, and then what innovative ways have you found to continue to engage with your fans as you move forward while they're now watching maybe on television and not attending in person? So Jim, can you tackle that one first?
Sure. Yeah, Bob, once this happened in March for us, we went into a mode of strictly engagement and how we can keep our fans engaged. At that point in time, I don't think any of us really knew how long this would be. And it was ironic, the day that we were kind of sent home, that exact same week, we sent out our season ticket books to our fans. So we were working remotely from home, and then we had this mailing delivery of all of our ticket books that were getting mailed, and there was nobody at the office to redirect. So there was some challenges that we had there. But really at that point, for the first few months, it was just making sure everybody was safe, healthy, and with their families, and we did some food drives. The organization did a lot of work with some charitable organizations and a lot of our sponsors for us to come together and deliver a message that throughout this, the Pittsburgh Pirates will continue to be a brand that helps all families and everybody in need. Where that translated to our season ticket holders and our sponsors was just as an activation and engagement with Zoom calls, town hall meetings with our players and our front office staff, our president with business, and then also with baseball, trying to still engage and make sure baseball was on top of mind of everybody, with sharing a hope and a vision that eventually we will get people back into a ballpark. We didn't know when that was necessarily going to be, but we wanted to make sure that we were in state engaging that. Bob, we went back to handwritten notes, which was very important, so people could get things in the mail. Emails are always important that you can do, but with people always being at home now, and there was a excitement of maybe getting mail in your mailbox, so we really put an emphasis on that. We really tried to focus on families with kids, and every Sunday, Pirates.com, we would send out coloring books and or other activities for kids. We also did some with our team chef of where you can produce food and menus that you could do at home. So it was truly engagement from a service end. Now we're starting to flip a little bit to a sales aspect now that we kind of have a schedule, and we're looking not only for 2020 but also 2021. But the main thing, Bob, was engage and making sure that we're here and let people talk and listen to them.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So Mike Trudnak, with you and your corporate partners and just the situation with college athletics, which is just so up in the air right now, what have you at Learfield IMG College done to stay connected?
Yeah, so, you are right, up in the air. I feel like every day, and you'll see I keep checking my phone, you get different news from schools and conferences as we speak. The biggest thing is fans want to be engaged. Fans are missing sports drastically. I remember when this all first happened, about a month into it, I was watching the 76ers play the Milwaukee Bucks in a virtual video game with the commentators from the Philadelphia 76ers. My wife looked at me and told me I'm nuts, but I just needed some sort of sports content. I was going crazy. So I think where we are in 2020 and the digital world we live in, and how most people are getting their information from this, right? I think we're positioned really well to get content that fans want and in their hands often and quickly. We talk about access. Fans always want access, right? They want access to their favorite player from the 90s or the early 2000s. So it's as simple as replaying a game or streaming a game that was important in the history of your program and having 2 or 3 of the captains on that team commentate and talk to fans like we're doing here about, oh, here on that play, here's what we did, and here's what we were thinking going into the 4th quarter. It's great insight. And I think in a lot of ways, fans and community members are appreciating that we're being creative and that we're giving them opportunities that they wouldn't have gotten pre-COVID. So it's just a matter of getting in front of our fans in unique ways and also allowing them to feel like they're still a part of the Bison family, the Owl family, and so on as we go into it.
Yeah.
And we've done some fun things, like Jim has said, with coloring books and creative stuff that we get out. We did the same thing with cooking. We had our coaches actually prepare food with their families in their kitchen, favorite recipes, and get that out. And it was huge hits. Our fans loved it. And then they were trying recipes and sending it back in. So I think anytime that we could connect our brand and our past into our fan base, it's something unique that they crave.
And Jim, I should have asked you this, and I'll ask you, Mike. So will you continue to do these things once things get back to normal? Or are you finding things that you've been able to connect with fans in a certain way that you'll continue to do?
100%. I mean, I think in some ways we've figured out new marketing opportunities that are more impactful than what we were doing prior to COVID. You know, when we look at the next 2 to 3 years and we're climbing out of this, because this isn't something that's going to instantly turn around. Businesses, it's going to take them years to get back to where they were. We are going to adapt a lot of what we're doing now and then marry the two together. And I think when we do that, it's going to be very impactful for our corporate partners and our fan bases.
Yeah. Okay. And Gerald, you came before starting your business. You came from minor league baseball, which has just suffered dramatically, even with the closing of the season. And can you just talk about that area? Because that's an area, minor league baseball is one in particular that our students, many of our students are currently working in and achieve internships there. But can you talk about that industry a little bit?
Absolutely. No, it's kind of a shame in many ways that the virus, in addition to, I think there's another layer with the professional baseball agreement that's kind of really hampered what I like to call the soul of America's pastime. I mean, there are 158 markets, homogeneous markets, if you will, of minor league cities and towns that, quite frankly, during those 4 to 5 months of time, they're really kind of the focal point of those markets. You know, I mean, we got some great baseball towns across America that are not major league cities, you know, the Sacramentos of the world, Oklahoma City, Las Vegas, Scranton, Mike, if you will. So there's tons, Altoona, there's tons and tons of these towns that don't have quite frankly, their main source of entertainment. I'll go back even further into my career with Feld Entertainment. The business model with both minor league baseball and Feld Entertainment is butts and seats. You know, they don't have a strong media partnership element to kind of still make revenue on. And so it's for some clubs and other entertainment industries to have to rethink and change direction. I don't want to use that P word, but change direction and think of other ways to generate revenue. So unlike the Jim Popovich of the world, who has TV revenue to kind of hold them up a little bit, and licensing revenue and so forth, you know, I think it's the number was 20. It's like 20 87% of the top revenue generating licensing teams in minor league baseball. It was all made up of 20 clubs. So there's a whole nother 140 clubs that really don't generate revenue, if you will, from licensing and merchandising, like Mike referenced earlier. So they're having to get better at those elements. We're in the process of going through some things with Octagon to try and get to a place where we could have national television and some other things on media with minor league baseball, but it didn't quite make the cut.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Gerald. And Hailie, in the world of golf, just talk to us a little bit there, the connections that are made with the professionals, if you will.
Yeah, and Gerald just referenced Octagon there. That's something that the USGA, being that the United States Golf Association is a governing body similar to the USOPC, or not quite what the NFL or the NHL is, but more of a governing body that is centralized around rules and governing the game and governance in general. We don't actually have specific players. So we conduct national championships. So the US Open, the Women's Open, the men's and women's amateur, so on and so forth. So what we were really able to do is take this time and figure out, how are we going to interact with fans when we don't have the traditional national championships? Because we only ended up this year doing the men's and women's open and men's and women's amateur. So how are we actually going to interact with fans when we have a very limited time with them, and most of it was going to be pushed back to the end of this year and all of those things? What we were able to do is work with some of our past champions, like a Jack Nicklaus. And we ran the 1980 US Open. Jack is back at Baltusrol, right down the road here in New Jersey. But we had Jack and a famous golf writer actually talk and commentate while that telecast was being broadcast again over our social media channels and things like that, working with Octagon and just some of the different players that we have access to in that regard, because they're innately around our championships, is just kind of how we were able to connect with fans. And then we were already in the process of a rebranding for this year of the US Open, and that's been completely shifted 180 degrees, which there's a lot of time, energy, and capital that was put behind that. But part of that was creating a US Open fan club, the Victory Club, and it was already in the works to get fans engaged more around the US Open year long. So what we were able to do is really try and use that as it's like a beacon for fans to get involved when we've pushed that championship back till September. And we use the original week of US Open to do a lot of these different activities, similar to what the Masters did with the cancellation of the Masters, just utilizing that week of strategy to really get fans excited about something that's going to happen later in the year. And whereas the PGA Tour has decided that it'll be fanless for the rest of the year, we're in a unique situation that our championship isn't governed by the PGA Tour. So fingers crossed that we'll have some representation there, but that's all still TBD. I mean, as everyone else is saying, it's literally a daily, we don't quite know what's going on, but just being able to integrate with fans through connecting them with our past champions has been something that's been really fun to work on.
Well, and Hailie, you mentioned, it's a day-to-day thing. I know Jim Popovich is living an hour-to-hour thing with baseball about ready to happen. And Jim, I think I can speak for everybody on this call that we are so excited for baseball to be back and watching live sports. I mean, it's going to be terrific. And then I'll follow up with, the NBA and the NHL. But Jim, as you look at the kinds of things that you're doing now, you referenced it earlier before we got started, the kind of skill sets that you are utilizing now that were never called upon before. What kinds of things are you doing now that you just didn't do before, that aren't necessarily on your job description, but that you're doing now? Because I think that would help the other professionals on the call along with students.
Yeah, Bob, it's again, when I go back to being prepared, there were some things that there's no textbook, there's no lesson plan that could teach you for some of this. You just have to figure it out. And, I have to commend our leadership, Travis Williams, our president, and Bob Nutting, our owner. They really went into to this with being prepared for anything. And, we started even in March and April just with, we probably had 5 to 10 scenarios that we were preparing for. And there were days that we were like, wow, why are we preparing for all this? But what ended up happening was some of these scenarios that we thought, there was pieces of each of them that kind of came together that really helped us where we are today. Preparing, I know that's something probably we, especially in baseball, we probably don't do well enough because our game, there's so many games that you say you don't have time, but I would highly recommend time and being prepared, trying to anticipate any scenario. But to answer your question, Bob, working with governments and local health officials and thinking of procedures on ways that you can walk in our hallway, how many people can be in a lunchroom, removing paper cups and napkins and all that stuff that we took for granted, path of travel, even for, that's always discussed with our fans, but we're even looking at when we get back to fans, are there certain gate times and certain gates that people can enter and cannot enter, working through different scenarios on seat manifests by 6 feet apart and how that works. There's a whole list of things, but I would say the health and local officials with political and government, we're preparing with Governor Wolf to meet with him, and that would be something that I never anticipated we would be doing.
Yeah. And so Mike Trudnak with college athletics, the same kind of thing, working with government officials, I'm sure is at the high end for the athletic directors across the country. How is Learfield IMG College sort of staying in that conversation, learning about what might be expected, and will there be college football in the fall, those kinds of questions?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. Jim said it best. You put 10 plans together, and it's the 11th plan that you need that you didn't put together. It's been a roller coaster. One day you feel like, okay, I feel good. We're gonna have college football, and then the next day you're like, there's no way we're having college football. And then the following day, it's we might have college football, and it goes back and forth. And it's a very difficult challenge. At the end of the day, you're at the mercy on the collegiate side of a few things. One, what are the state and local government regulations, which again, those change drastically every day, and they're very minimal. So you're not getting the full amount of detail that you want because they don't fully know, right? Because it's such a fluid situation. And then the second thing is on the college side, it's not just the fans that you're thinking about. There's professors, as you guys know, do they want to have students back in class? Do they want to go virtual? There's the local community. When you're bringing students back from all over the world, not just the country, but the world back on campus and into that community. What are their thoughts? What's the local mayor, local council's thoughts on that? So there's a lot of people that go into making these decisions, and everybody has a different opinion on how they feel safe, different level. So it's a difficult process to gauge. But the most important thing is you have to take everybody's feelings into consideration, and at the end of the day, do what's best for your student athletes and do what's best for your faculty and staff and the community members. But it's changing every day. You pay attention to every press conference that comes out. Anytime that the governor's on, you watch it because you don't know what the new regulations are going to be.
Yeah. And Gerald, with you, you talked yesterday in our brief discussion about there's optimism beyond this minor league baseball season and that there'll be some reorganization of minor league baseball, which could bring opportunities down the road?
Well, optimism for some, and not for others. I think that's still to be determined. I know I had discussions with Bob Nutting myself down here in Bradenton back in February, and he felt like some changes needed, candidly, between facilities and some other organizational aspects of how the game is currently structured. So if you look at the NBA or the NFL, and the relationship, I would say, between the American Hockey League as well as the NHL, and even the USL versus the MLS, the relationship is different, right? So why are we negotiating with a group that we don't need to negotiate with? So there's change that's going to happen. Some will be for the good. I think those markets that are left at the train station holding the bag will have to not use the P word, but they'll have to challenge themselves to find other ways of staying in the baseball industry. I do know for a fact the Frontier League, for instance, they're looking to literally double in size or more than double in size, and quite frankly, being very aggressive about it. Burlington, Iowa, Clinton, Iowa, they don't want you. We do. Come on, with open arms. So, local franchises there in Pittsburgh, like the Washington Wild Things, you could see some different teams in some different markets actually in the foreseeable future. Okay.
Thank you. And Hailie, with golf in particular, do you see changes happening, drastic changes happening in a positive way moving forward?
I think with golf, I think we know how much we love having fans there. I think it brings a very different dynamic to it. Obviously, golf is back and it's being competed, but I mean, it's a bummer when you see something like John Rahm chipping in this weekend on a par 3, and it's one of the greatest shots of the championship, but there's not that innate roar that typically comes with that, and there's not the crowds that Tiger draws when you see him teeing it up on TV on the first tee. It's very it's almost an eerie feeling to just see Tiger walking down a fairway with no one around him on a tee box where he's not surrounded. So I think where we're really excited to get back to a fan environment, golf as a whole, from the actual event side, isn't really going to change too much until we actually get fans back. Golf as an industry has seen an uptick. As soon as the pandemic hit, you could not buy a golf hitting net. Golf sales went up dramatically. Don't have the specific percentages on some of those sales and things, but golf was one of those sports that was deemed safe kind of right as the pandemic hit, because you could be socially distanced. Mm-hmm. And it was considered that, by putting the pool noodles in the golf holes or putting PVC pipes, and for those who don't quite know what I'm talking about, when playing the game, they thought really the only thing that, if you were legitimately social distance 6 feet apart, that could be contaminated was trying to get the ball out of the hole and touching the flag stick. So by putting something in a cup that raised the ball so that it wasn't going the whole way down into the hole actually was an innovation that has come out of this pandemic, and then different small inventions of something that can actually raise the ball out with your putter and things like that have come out of it. But from the professional side of sport, I don't think we'll see too many changes, other than just trying to engage with fans a little bit differently, probably from a digital perspective. But I know the whole industry is just really excited to get everyone back out on the course.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Jazlyn, do you have a question from the audience that we can ask?
Yes, I do. I'm not sure who said it, but they wanted to know just advice for older adults seeking to change careers. Anyone could answer that?
Yeah, Bob, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump in on that one because I read the comment.
Yeah.
So I think anybody at any age can get into sports. I think the challenge that you face is working in sports is a lot of hours. It is not a 9 to 5 job, as each of these people on this call will tell you. So you sometimes are getting at work at 7 in the morning, and sometimes you're not leaving till 11 o'clock at night. And depending on the sport you're in, if you're working in minor league baseball, which tends to be I'd say the easier path to get into because there's so many teams and every market, you might go 3 weeks without a day off. So as people get to a certain age and have a spouse or a partner or have children involved, it's a lot more difficult to invest in the time. But what you also see is some people say, well, you know what? I'm 40 years old. I'm not going to go out there and pull tarp. I'm 40 years old. I'm not going to get into that concession stand and flip burgers. I'm beyond that. The reason I wanted to take this question is because I hired a employee named Kelly Cusick, who was 40 years old and said, my dream is to work in sports and I will do whatever it takes. And she is the single best employee I have ever hired in my life. She has come in and she went in and said, I will do anything. She literally was beating the 21-year-olds into work every day. By the time it was leaving 5 o'clock, you started to see all these, the millennials, and forgive me for saying that, 5 o'clock, boom, I'm out. Kelly was there until 6 o'clock because she had more work to do to get going. And seeing her work ethic and what she wanted to do in order to take to the next level, she has been promoted 4 times in 5 years. So do I think that it's a little bit difficult because of the life adjustments for somebody who's a little bit older? Yes. But if you're willing to put the work in and you're willing to prove to yourself that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, I welcome it. And there's a lot of cases out there of people you can talk to on what it takes to get into.
Anybody else want to follow up on Mike's comments? I'd like to hear from everybody, in fact. So working hard, we've established that. That's a part of sports, arts, and entertainment. That's our world. What are those other key talents or traits that you look for in an employee when you're hiring somebody? And let's talk about entry level, or if somebody, we've got some folks on the call that might be thinking about switching careers. What other traits do you look for? Gerald, I'll throw that to you first.
I think it depends on the personality. So we talked about fit earlier, and Jim, we talked about culture. And so I'd reverse it. If I'm anybody out here watching this panel discussion, I would say, what values are important to you and what you're seeking, right? So if you want to work with a group of young folks, or you want to be active and work 12 hours, you don't mind that. I mean, you need to understand what it is you want out of life and out of your career from the outset, and maybe have a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term type plan so that you kind of have a little bit more control. And I would say right now, guys, is a perfect time to start networking with targeted organizations. So if you got to work with the Pittsburgh Penguins, or you want to work with the Pittsburgh Pirates, or you want to be in Happy Valley and work in State College, or back in Cleveland, or whatever the case may be. Regionally, think about it regionally. Think about it in terms of, I love baseball, but also understand, and Hailie's a great example of this, she didn't like golf, right? So I didn't know who Feld Entertainment was before I got a phone call and said, hey, if you're looking to get back to Florida, you should understand. So understand you have your main plan, but be able to transition into something different if that opportunity presents itself, because you never know the person that you talked to at the Cleveland Cavaliers and you didn't get that role, or it didn't work out to be there. Now they're with the Buffalo Bison, and they said, you know what, here's an opportunity for you. I really enjoyed my visit. You didn't see yourself working in Buffalo, New York. I didn't see myself working in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'd be honest with you. But 2 children and a marriage, a wife later, it's Pittsburgh is one of the best places I've ever lived, and so grateful that I live there. So just understand that, specifically in the world of sport and entertainment. And Mike, I know you know this. Pops, I know you know this. Bob, I know you know it. And Hailie, you obviously in New Jersey now. So you just never know, right? You can go from Seneca Valley to the northern part of New Jersey really quickly. You just never know.
Yeah.
I grew up in Savannah, Georgia. So just understand that, be flexible to some degree, and understand that this industry could take you different places for a lot of good reasons, quite frankly, too.
Yeah.
And just to touch on that, I mean, talk about being flexible. My last semester of actually being in class at Point Park, the USGA had reached out to me in either late January, early February, and I was actually interning with the Pirates at the time, and they reached out about this full-time position. I was like, okay, I'm hoping this is it. Thinking maybe I'll be out of here by like March. That'd be fantastic. I was super excited. No, it took until May. I had 4 or 5 interviews for like an incoming coordinator's position. I was shocked just how many interviews there were for this position, but very long story short, I had given up on it. I remember, I think, talking to Ed and Steve upstairs in the office one day and saying, I don't know what their deal is. They can't be interested in me still at this point. It's been months now. And I was kind of done and sold off of it. I got an email and a phone call one day. They wanted me there within 8 days. And I said, oh, I've got this really big commitment on May 14th or May 13th. I said, would you mind if I started on the 15th? They said, well, that's probably not going to work. And I was like, could I work remote the first week? Would that be possible? I was like, this is like really short notice. I don't have somewhere to live. I have a commitment with a coaching position that I held at the time. I said, it's our end of the year tournament. I have to coach it. I walked out. They said that would be fine. I walked out and I looked at my parents. I said, I have a full-time job. I'm leaving in 2 weeks. I figured out an apartment because I found a system where you can actually like book, kind of like Airbnb, but for apartments. I said, I've got an apartment already. I'm moving 2 weekends from now. If you can help me move, great. If not, I'll just pack the back of my SUV and I'll go on my own. And that was probably one of the most humbling experiences ever, of them originally saying, no, you do need to be here within 8 days, and trying to get them to work with the remote option before remote was cool and acceptable. In 2017, it was not really a viable option, they felt, for anyone. But if you want this, you have to be willing to just about put anything out on the line for it. And told the Pirates at the time that I was leaving, unfortunately, for a full-time position, and I was going, and it all worked out, but it was the fastest my life has ever changed, until this pandemic. But it's the fastest I've ever had to turn on a dime. And if you really want this, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but if you really want this, and this is the thing that means the most to you, you do it, and you don't think twice about it. And that's kind of something I think that really showcases the difference of people who want to work in this industry. Or I've talked to a lot of students or kids in the golf industry that know they're probably not going to go pro, but they want to work in the sports industry after. And hearing them say, well, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. You'll learn quickly that if you want to work in sports, you'll do anything to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in real quick on a couple, and I agree with everybody on the panel. A couple basic, I would say, communication. Not only what we learned about from working from home is how you can communicate to your superiors, to your coworkers. So you want to be able to communicate up, communicate down, but also writing skills. That is something that we're always writing copy, and we can always use help on conveying thoughts. A lot of times it's easy when we were able to call people in an office or get together in a meeting space. You know, that's probably going to change for a little bit. So how you're able to write and communicate is very important. And organization also. Make sure you're organized. You organize your day make sure that you use your time wisely, because there's a lot of times, and we're all about the hard work and we all work the hours, but I think there's other ways that we can become more efficient with our time and make sure you organize your day. So that's some quick bullet points there, Bob.
Yeah.
I
Jazlyn,
just
go
had
ahead.
this goes for all of the panels. So I'm going to be a senior at Point Park. I just don't know. Did you guys all go to school to get your master's? Do you think in this day and age that's something that I should do? Because I'm looking to go get my MBA, and I also play volleyball. So either become a grad assistant, go and have them pay for school. What do you guys believe is the best route for me to take, and as well as everyone else on the call?
So I'll jump in real quickly on that. I did get my master's. I was very fortunate because I was able to go to Southern Miss and do it for free right out of playing collegiate baseball. In those days, I started a website, and in 1995, we didn't have, or not everyone had websites, I should say, and did it for my Division II school. And a gentleman who had gone to Southern Miss said, "Hey, you could do the same thing at Southern Miss." So that's another path, right? You just never know how your path's what's going to take you. And quite frankly, I wasn't sure I was getting a master's degree. It just kind of worked out at that point in time. I would say this: the most important thing is experience, right? So I am a big proponent of education, and I wouldn't say you needed a doctorate. I don't necessarily think you need a master's. It does help separate you, to Mike's point. I think Mike said that out of the gate. What's going to separate you? I think that is a separator, in my opinion. If you're going to work in collegiate sports, they want you to have a master's. I think to be Paige and or Bob at some point in time, you need to probably have a master's, I'm guessing, right? But if you're going to work in minor league baseball, or you're going to work for the Pirates, or you're going to work for a lot of places, that's not the end all, right? That's my personal opinion based on the last 20 years. It's not the end all, because quite frankly, Hailie's probably, I'm assuming, very good at what she does. She might not even need a degree, quite frankly, because this is the demand for social media and folks who know how to do that well and keep the message on point and keep it consistent, whether you're in season or out of season, is extremely imperative. And she clearly has done that and done that successfully. So it's kind of a hybrid. It's a personal thing. If you're going to work in the collegiate space, I would say, and Bob, Paige, please help me if I'm wrong on this one, I would say it's almost automatic you need to have a master's. Even coaches, sometimes they want them to have masters, right? So specialized. But Mike, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think with me, I go back and forth, right? It depends on what you want to do. There was a time when I was in minor league baseball that when I got that question, I would say a master's is a waste of time, right? Because when I get an application, I look at what is their experience. I'd rather 2 years of experience than 2 years of more schooling. Now that I'm working in the collegiate world, like Gerald said, it's a little bit different, right? My only thing that I would stress is if you go down that master's path and grad assistant, you still need to get as much experience as possible. Just because you're getting a master's degree is not an excuse for not networking, not having internships or practicums or whatever the school allows you to do. If that's something that you want to do, great. But make sure you're still getting experience to put on your resume. Because, and forgive me, Bob, you might yell at me for this, a GPA only gets you so far, right? Yeah. If you have a 4.0 GPA and you have no work experience, to me, you're very intelligent, but you're lazy. If you have a 3.2 GPA and you have 4 internships and you worked a part-time job, that tells me that you can multitask, that you're willing to go out there and get after it. And I'm going to put that resume ahead of the 4.0 with no experience. So whatever you do, please, experience is what's going to separate you.
And I think, and I would never suggest anyone do what I did. So somewhat earmuffs, but I actually got hired with the USGA while I was finishing my degree at Point Park. I still haven't received a college degree from anywhere. I'm now finishing my school online with Liberty University, but I still hold Point Park so near and dear to my heart because I owe everything to Point Park and going to school here and the professors, and I keep in touch with people. And I mean, I talk to Steve probably once every 3 to 4 weeks, a pretty long conversation. Normally it's a phone call of, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do I do? He's very used to getting those phone calls from me at this point. I had a ton of internships. I was not always in class. A bunch of the professors on this call will know that. But if I wasn't in class, I was doing an event. I was working for somebody. It wasn't just messing around, not coming to school. I have yet, knock on wood, to never have that bite me that I haven't finished. I am going to finish, but the experiences that you have are valuable. And I know just personally, just talking to like my hiring manager on my last review this year, we were talking about education, and he goes, you know, I never thought I would have somebody working for me that doesn't have a college degree. And I never thought that I would be looking to develop somebody who doesn't currently have a college degree. He goes, but you and your hard work and what you've done for our organization, and really just the new development of our voice outwardly has completely changed that opinion of mine. And he goes, I'm really glad that I've had the experience of you working for me to see that and to actually see what it is. Now, don't go out and just be like, I'm going to drop out of college and start working. It's a very, very high risk to do that. In my case, it worked out, but I definitely think in what I'm doing, a master's doesn't help you in content creation and digital and things like that. Going and learning from like a week-long class or something, like I know NYU offers so many different skills certificates and things like that, where you're actually learning new things. I think those are very valuable. And a heck of a lot cheaper than a master's, to be quite honest. I just don't know if that ROI is there in different areas of the sports world anymore for getting a master's. But if it's being paid for, I mean, you can argue each way. But I mean, for what I do, Gerald was right. You barely need a degree at this point anymore. But it just depends what route you want to go in that regard.
Yeah. There is no straight route. I hope the message that everyone's receiving today is that all the panelists have different ways that they got to where they are. And sometimes you don't choose that. It happens because of a pandemic or something else. The idea, though, of being open to learning regardless of how old you are is critically important. I can tell you that I went and got my master's, Jazlyn, much older, and I did it not because I thought I needed it to advance my career, but because I thought I needed it to be a better leader, to be a better manager. So I waited and didn't need it until that point, but that was just my situation. So I think from everyone here, there's not a finite answer for you. I think whatever you decide, it'll be the right answer. It'll be the right thing to do, because you'll figure it out just like Hailie figured it out, and Gerald has, and Mike has, and Jim has. We all sort of figure it out depending upon what the situation is and what we decide. So let's just talk about any final thoughts, and we'll wrap it up here. Jim, any final thoughts for students? I know we did have one question: are the Blue Jays playing at PNC Park? But I was going to not put you on the spot for that, but if you want to answer that, go right ahead.
So we're still in dialogue with them. It's looking like, any way that we can help another team and help Major League Baseball, we will look to do it. We're still looking through some operational pieces. The one thing that our leadership is aware of is don't want to put the current staff out. Gerald talked about working in operations before, so combining not only our Pirates games, but also to have another team become involved. And I think it's been unprecedented that could happen within 3 days of the season starting, especially from being another country. But yeah, that is the plan. It looks like we're the front runner here, but nothing finalized. Okay. Final thoughts. I think everybody, Bob, said it exactly. You pick your own path. You have the right attitude. You're willing to work hard. you're willing to learn and get better each day. You know, we don't always have the answers, and we're going to make mistakes, but if you can accept those mistakes and say, hey, I'm going to learn from them, and you have that right attitude. Culture is big with us here, not only from our existing people, but what we're trying to bring into the place. So bring that positive attitude, you'll have success.
Great. Hailie, how about you? Some final thoughts for everyone.
I think it's just working in sports is a lot of fun. You don't go into wanting to work in sports just because, and it's something that excites you. There's a lot of athletes in this, like former athletes in this realm, and I think at the end of the day, everyone wants to be a part of a winning team, and if you can do that and you can work hard to get there, I think that's what you want to. That's what your greatest goal tends to be. So I think just work hard, wake up every day, excited to do what you're doing. The hours are long, but the years are short. Like I cannot stress that enough. I went to sign my lease in April, and it was my third lease in just this apartment. And the fact that I've been out in New Jersey now for 4 seasons, like where did that time go? I mean, I felt like I was just sitting in classes either on the North Shore or, you know, down in the heart of Pittsburgh, and man, do I miss it. But there's not a day that goes by that I'm not really appreciative for where I am. And, you know, there's nights when you go out after you're done at the course at 10, 11 o'clock and you're eating dinner at 11:45, and your call time to be at the golf course is 4:45 the next morning. And I absolutely love it. Like there's nothing better than the first tee of the US Open, of watching the Masters, hearing Jim Nance's voice. I've been privileged to go to Augusta National, just being in those types of places, in those realms. I mean, just work hard and you'll do well in life.
Thank you, Hailie. Gerald, how about you?
You know, I would just tell everybody to be steadfast and have a plan. You know, have that plan A, plan B, plan C. You know, to Jazlyn's, question, it's really up to you to make your own path. Take what your professors and advisors are giving you at Point Park, but put it into practice, right? And then never forget where you came from. Continue to network with folks and just see where your career takes you. You know, you may start in sports and land somewhere else. You might start somewhere else other than sports and land in sports. But if, be steadfast in your commitment to what it is you want to do based on that criteria that you set. And I think if you do that, you'll be largely successful in this career. It's worked for me. It's worked for Mike. It's worked for Jim. And I think it's worked for Hailie so far. So, yeah. And for Bob. And his Bob's mustache.
Thank you, Gerald. Appreciate that. Michael, how about a final thought?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. One, Hailie, I think, said it best too. You don't know when your opportunity is going to come. Today might be your opportunity, right? It's the littlest things. Like I'm looking around on this call and I'm looking at faces of who's on here. Like I'm going to remember Jazlyn because I'm seeing her and she spoke and I could put a name and a face to it. I'm going to remember, Jevin, because not only did he make a comment in here saying hello when we used to work together, but then he shot me a LinkedIn message while we were on here. So your opportunities are coming. You can't let them go by. Like Jazlyn said, if somebody says, I want you here in 2 weeks, you do whatever it takes to get there in 2 weeks. If you're on a call like this, put your face on video, throw on a dress shirt. Let us see you. Let us remember who you are. That's what's going to separate you guys. You constantly have to think, what is separating me from everybody else? If there's 45 people on this call, Jazlyn and Jevin separated themselves to me on this call today because of the actions that they took. And then the last thing I want to say is nobody cares about everybody on this call more than Bob does. And I know personally, he will do whatever it takes to get you guys in position to succeed. Please take advantage of having a person like Bob who cares about you and is willing to put the work in. use him as an asset in your life. And that's all I got to say.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. And I'm just going to throw out that Paige and Ed and Teresa are on this call. Chuck Berry's on this call. Jason Varnish, all faculty, all who care tremendously about Point Park students and about our industry. And our goal is just to put you in a position so that you can thrive. We'll teach you as much as we know. We'll bring in experts that'll teach you things that we don't know. And then it really comes back to you to take advantage of those opportunities like everyone has said. So I want to thank again the panelists today. Really appreciate your insight. Thanks for sharing some personal things as well. I wish all of you the best of luck. We're not going to talk about uncertain times. We're going to talk about the fact that we're certain that this will change and it'll be for the better for all of us. We'll be much more innovative. We'll be much more creative. And we'll do that because we have to. We have to thrive. So thank you again, Jim Popovich, Mike Trudnak, Gerald, Hailie, thank you for spending time with us. Jazlyn, thank you for co-moderating for us. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the SAEM staff. We're going to sign off for now. If any of the SAEM students want to stick around for a little bit and just chat with us, we're here to answer questions or just to say hello and see how you're doing. So feel free to stick around. But thanks again to the panelists.
Thanks for having us, Bob.
Thanks, everyone.